Hello, I'm Jonathan,
And I'm Sam.
and this is Progression in Progress. Alrighty, how you doing, Sam?
Good. How about you?
Doing well. You ready for today's episode?
Let's get started.
Okay, so today, Sam and I were talking before the episode, or trying to figure out what we were going to talk about, and we had a few different ideas, and I suggested this idea to Sam, and he's like, you know what? We kind of just got to get this out of the way, so let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, so the idea, or I guess just the topic, is just everything kind of surrounding COVID-19 or the coronavirus, however you want to call it, and how we can still be progressing during this time of uncertainty and trial and hardship for many people.
This isn't going to, we are going to be talking about COVID, but it's not going to be all your hot takes on the science or the political stuff behind it. We don't really want to talk about any of that. What we're going to talk about is COVID and how it relates to the theme of this podcast, which is progression and progress. You know, you want to be constantly progressing and moving forward. So just kind of, that's the little preface, the little intro to the episode. And I guess kind of just to lay things out, you know, I can imagine most people were living pretty normal lives before all of this happened. Hopefully people were being productive. Hopefully people were on that progression and progress grind. You know, they were progressing in their life, moving forward. It's okay if you weren't. There's always there's always an opportunity to change things around. But, you know, before all this happened, kind of things were normal, right? It kind of sounds weird to say, but that's just how it was, right?
Yep.
And then, you know, I remember in like January or whatever, texting with my grandma, and she was telling me about this like whack virus in China and like showing me all these pictures of Wuhan and stuff like that. And now we're here.
Yep.
So, you know, when Sam and I were talking about this, we kind of noticed a relationship between, you know, the progression of COVID and the loss of ability to do things, kind of an inverse graph type of thing. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Inverse graph. Hopefully that's right.
Yeah.
But as COVID progressed, as the seriousness progressed, your ability to do different things, you know, that the level of things you were able to do, that dropped. Your options were reduced. And this isn't talking about, you know, what we should and shouldn't be able to do, but rather we feel like there was like or at least I feel like I witnessed a decline in productivity, a decline in progression from people. Do you feel like you saw the same thing, Sam?
Yeah, it was kind of like, okay, everything's kind of closing down, and, you know, because of whatever reasons, and now I can't go out and do certain things, so now I can't really do anything, kind of a mentality.
And I feel like, well, I don't think you can really blame people for feeling like productivity went down the drain. Because if I was in the situation, you know, where I was at school, and then, you know, all this stuff starts going down, and then teachers like, okay, it's pass or fail. There goes a huge motivation for a lot of people doing well in school. Boom, that's gone.
Yep.
I mean, that's what's happened to my brothers. Their classes are now pass fail, even though they're in elementary and high school. You know, their classes are pass fail, and, you know, their motivation has severely dropped. You know, my brother, their goal is to kind of just get their stuff done as quickly as possible. They just kind of go for it, and then, you know, they're not trying to get the most out of school. And I don't know if it's like, I don't know if that's the best thing we could be doing or they could be doing, but I don't really blame them for that.
Yeah, definitely.
And there's just, I just feel like what I've witnessed is just, I said this before, but just a general decline in productivity. People feel like there's not much to do. Everything's been put on pause, because that's what it feels like. Everything's been put on pause.
Mm-hmm.
And And I think that's a really understandable point of view, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And then I think it definitely affects certain people way more than others, like you were kind of saying with your brothers, or, maybe some people, like their whole careers and everything has something to do with, just being with people in person and things of that nature. I know I've read stories of some people that like literally cannot like do their jobs, or like, cannot really progress more because of not being able to really do certain things because of everything that's going on. So it's definitely understandable for some people to say that, I can't do anything, or I can't really, or just progression is kind of going down a little bit in those respective areas.
Yeah, everyone's situation is going to be different. The goal of this podcast is not to tell people exactly what they should do for their situation, because it's impossible. We don't know everyone's situation. There's so many different situations, especially in the situation we're in right now. There's so many people who are so incredibly affected, and what they're facing is like very, very real and very, very difficult and tough. But then there's also people who are not as affected. And I think it'd be unfair for us to try to give a one size fits all advice, or just give any advice in general.
Yeah.
But rather, what I think the goal for this discussion is to talk about a few things that you can, or hopefully we have this discussion, and then by the end of it, you might be able to pull something out that you feel like applies to your own life, and then hopefully use it in your own life in your own way. This isn't a one size fits all type of thing. Do this, do that. Here's exactly what you need to do type of thing. But rather, we're hoping to just have a discussion that will create like a spark that, and I feel like that's the goal for this whole podcast in general, with the whole progression and progress, because we don't have everything figured out. We don't, we're not at the end of our careers looking from the top down saying, okay, this is what you need to do. But rather, we're from the bottom. We're at the bottom right now, trying to work, progress in life. Not necessarily monetarily, but just in general. We're young, and we have most of our life in front of us, not behind us. So we look at things from a different point of view. But I guess just the general goal, just to summarize what I just said, is the goal here is to have you find something from this podcast that you can take and apply to your own life, not for us to give you specific advice, but rather to hopefully this discussion creates a spark that can help your situation.
Yeah, we can just talk about, what we're doing, and then, it may not be exactly the same as your situation, but yeah, hopefully you still get something out of it.
Yeah. So I guess the big topic, the big theme of what we want to talk about today is control what you can. Do you mind explaining that a little bit, Sam? Like, what does it mean when we say control what you can?
Yeah. So when I just kind of hear that, I just kind of think of, there are lots of things in life that are variables that are just, there are other factors that are affecting those things. And, obviously you can't control everything. We're not, we don't design everything. We don't have full creative control of the earth. But for each individual has the ability to control aspects of their life. Actually, I don't know how to describe this, because it's like, it's almost kind of self-explanatory in a way. Like, you can only control what you can control, and other stuff just kind of happens.
Yeah,
and
well,
you can't control it.
when we were having a conversation about this, Sam, what we kept going back to is we were comparing things to a deck of cards, and life is kind of, so while you were talking, I kind of thought of this analogy. Life, we were talking about decks of cards earlier, and just kind of how that relates to life. But I feel like right now, or just life in general, sometimes this is obviously a gross oversimplification, but you could think of things like a game of Speed. I don't know. Have you ever played Speed, the card game Speed?
No, I've never heard of it.
Okay, so the way it works is you are dealt your 5 cards, and then you have your stack of cards. and then there's 2 cards in the center, and your goal is to look at the cards that you have, and you're supposed to place from what is, shoot, this is tough to explain, but what's placed on the table. Let's say there's a 5 placed on the table. Your goal is to either put a 6, which is 1 card higher, or a 4, which is 1 card lower. So you're going 1 up, 1 down, and then you're going through your deck of cards that you have in your hand, and then you are drawing from the rest of the cards. But this whole situation, I feel like or just in general, you can compare this to a game of Speed, because you're constantly being dealt different cards, and the cards that you have aren't perfect for the situation that you have. But the goal is to do what you can to control what you can. The goal is to put down what you can to play the certain cards that work for what's on the table at the certain time. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you kind of put that into any kind of many different analogies, but essentially, there are things that you can't control and there are things that you can control, and we just want to talk about the things that you can control and how you can use what you can control to make yourself a better person and progress in whatever ways that you can, even during this uncertain time.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. Yeah, there's, we could talk hours and hours and hours and hours and hours about the things you can't control, but at the end of the day, it sounds kind of stupid to say. I feel like we say a lot of simple, stupid stuff, but you can't control what you can't control. So therefore, focus on what you can control.
Yeah, don't worry about, and don't fixate and worry so much about the stuff that you can't control, and then just try to do the things that you can control. And then hopefully, just by doing the things you can control, maybe eventually the things you can't control could even maybe get better because of the things you can control, maybe indirectly.
And hopefully we don't sound ignorant, because there are a lot of things that you can't control that do play a big factor in your life. And not to say that we shouldn't try to improve those things, but I'm of the personal opinion, at the end of the day, what's going to make the biggest difference in your life is focusing on what you can control. Because going back to the deck of card analogy, life's like a game of Speed. You're constantly holding different cards. You constantly have a different deck of cards in front of you. And the best thing you can do, the most beneficial thing you can do for yourself, is to control what you can.
Yeah.
And I think the beauty of the phrase control what you can is because it applies different to every situation. I'm so grateful that we're sitting here right now and we don't have to tell everyone exactly what to do, because I can't do that. I don't know what everyone should do, but I can talk about control what you can, because that applies to everyone's different situation.
Yeah. And I mean, for every person it's different, and hopefully the things that you can control will still are still things that you can do, even beyond, maybe it's things that you didn't even necessarily think about too much beforehand, because you could do more before. So maybe there are other aspects and things that you can control now, or kind of put more focus on that you weren't able to before, and can work on those.
Yeah. So I guess maybe right now I have a cool story we could talk about, but maybe should we tell the story first, or should we talk about like what we're controlling right now in our own lives? Try to just talk about what's going on in our own lives. What do you think?
I guess we can probably just talk about, maybe we should just kind of talk about what is kind of happening with us as it relates to all this, before maybe going into other kind of stories and things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe do you want to, what have you been kind of doing during this time? Or I know a lot is kind of changing your life pretty because of all of this.
Yeah.
So what's kind of changed for you, and then what are you kind of doing to make the best of it?
Well, first I want to say real quick is that I got to give credit where credit is due. I am embarrassed that I didn't do this earlier in the podcast, but this whole phrase, control what you can, I have to credit to my dad teaching me this. So shout out to my dad for helping me learn this. But to answer your question, I was before this all went down, I was actually living in San Diego and, wasn't planning on doing what I'm doing right now. I wasn't planning on being home and, going down the current path that I'm going right now. I had a different plan, but things changed. Things kind of got thrown out of balance. Not thrown out of balance, that's not the right word, but the situation changed. The deck of cards changed. Things were shuffled around, and I ended up back at home, and I'm going back to school earlier than I imagined.
Yep.
And I was kind of just thrown into the situation in the middle of it. And, obviously every single situation is going to be different. So the things we talk about is personal to our situation. But one thing and I feel very grateful, this whole situation, I've been very blessed, and I feel grateful that, things have gone the way that they have. But one way I've taken control, or just focusing on what I can control, is, referencing the last episode, we talked a lot about habits and routines. And one thing that I've really appreciated doing during this time is maintaining my routines and habits. I was in the routine of waking up early and going to bed early. And when I came back home, that wasn't something that I needed to do. There was no need for me to go to bed early or wake up early. I didn't have any responsibilities that required me to be up at a certain time. I could stay up till 4 a.m. if I wanted to, and get up at 12 p.m. if I wanted to. But one thing that I feel like has been really beneficial and has helped me stay productive and has helped me continue to progress during this time is I've chosen to get up and then do my morning routine, which involves helping out around the house just a little bit, doing some exercise, doing some stretching, and then getting going with my day. Just doing that has really helped me kickstart my day so I don't get trapped in, like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I get trapped in, like, the Saturday morning routine, like, especially when I was doing, like, so this is what I'm trying to say. Like, sometimes when I was in school, or even now a little bit, you wake up on, like, if you still have things to do on Saturday, like if you have some responsibilities on Saturday or Sunday or whatever your day off is, or a different day of the week. Cause I know, Sam, you don't get Saturdays and Sundays off, but you get other days off. But if you wake up on your days off and then don't do things right away, it becomes, for me at least, so much harder to do those things. So I have been able to continue progressing, or at least attempting to continue to progress, by taking control of my days in the morning and just starting off my day by trying to get some things done. So that's, feel like, probably the biggest thing that I've done that's made a difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. Having all those routines and everything, and being able to still have some kind of structure during a time where you could just, let yourself go or do whatever you want. Definitely, it's good to keep on those habits. So then later on, when things do go back to normal, that you can still keep those habits and those mentalities. And that's honestly kind of the same thing for me that I was going to kind of talk about in a way. So for me, so since I have two different jobs, and for one of my jobs, they have I can't go into work physically, so I have to work from home. And this is kind of something that I've just kind of been realizing recently, is that I've always had this very this odd separation of like associating kind of like places with certain tasks, I guess you could say. So like, for example, like in school, I never really liked homework or doing homework, because in my mind, when I'm at school, then I'm doing school, and I'm learning, doing work, whatever. But then when I get home, then home is not, at least in my mind, somewhere where I do any kind of work, or home is somewhere where I can just relax and just kind of tune out, and not have to worry about those kinds of things. And so throughout all this, now that I've been kind of working home a bit more, it's been interesting that now now that I'm home more often, that's kind of adjusted my thinking a little bit, because now when I'm home, I have to be working, despite all my stuff is here and all of the other distractions. It's been interesting to be able to just kind of focus on work, and now I kind of have like a new mentality that I can do other things. Like, I used to have such a huge mental block to where it's like, okay, I cannot physically make myself do anything at home that is not that isn't like, I just didn't really want to do any kind of work at home sometimes. And so throughout all this, I kind of like the fact now that kind of having more of a I kind of have more of a routine and a structure now, like because of my schedule there, where I'm kind of at home. I now have to block off certain periods of time for doing work, and then other times for doing other things. So I think that's really kind of been the improvement I've seen. So that when after all this is over, even though I'll still probably prefer definitely going out and still working, at my actual job site, I can still use these kind of things I've been doing, and this kind of new mentality that I can kind of work on things anywhere, I guess you could say, and use that to actually kind of work on more things when I'm outside of designated places to do those things. I guess if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think
Kind of
that's
a weird thing, but it's something I've kind of seen.
I think that's pretty sweet. I think that's a perfect example of taking control. You had this mental block. Home is for home, work is for work, school is for school. But this whole situation threw that off. Work was no longer at work. Work was or at least for one of your jobs, work was at home. And there could have been a real problem there. You could have run into a huge problem. But I like that going back to the theme of this episode, you took control of what you could and you worked to overcome that mental block. And now, you've progressed. I would say you've progressed, and 10 years down the road, this progression that you've made right now will probably be helping at least a little. Not to say it's life-changing, but it's helped. Definitely. And I think I'm glad you shared that, because that's the perfect example. Is you're just doing what you can. You're just controlling what you can. You didn't, the external force was that you couldn't work from home, and you had this block, but then instead of just letting that destroy you, or not destroy you, but, become a huge obstacle, you controlled what you can and worked to overcome that. And I like that you said that after this is all over, you'll be coming out of this better. And I think that's key. And I know every single situation is different, and I don't want to generalize too much, because I know, the things we're saying are not going to apply to everyone's situation. It's not going to apply, perfectly. It's going to be real tough, but we can control what we can control. And I think that's pretty sweet that you can, it's empowering to take control of what you can control. I'm sounding like a brokered record now. I think we should probably move on to the story that I wanted to share. Yeah.
I think a lot of our episodes are kind of like this.
And, I know. I think it's because we're trying, maybe we need to shorten these episodes or something, because the stuff we talk about is just so simple that we're trying to fill 30 minutes and we just end up talking about the same things over and over again. But that's a conversation for a different day.
We're really trying to drive the points home.
I know,
I think all the simple things aren't emphasized enough sometimes. And they're just so obvious in a way that people don't even follow them. Or it's kind of like, almost in a way, like, I don't know, what's a dumb example? Like, it's almost like looking both ways when crossing the street. Like, sometimes, like, that, it's pretty obvious you want to look out before you get hit by the car, but sometimes we're just so distracted by other things, or, like, we're on our phones, or we're, just kind of thinking about other things that sometimes it's not so obvious, and then who knows, maybe we'll get hit by a car. So
Well,
I think it's good to kind of remind of just kind of these kind of simple yet really effective or good ideas.
well, the small and simple things are so powerful because this is my opinion is that they're so powerful because you do them all the time. The big giant grand things, you don't have very many opportunities to do those things. And those things are important, but you're probably going to be able to make much more headway, much more progress by focusing on the small and simple things because that's what you're doing frequently and that's what has the most impact on your day.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the story that I wanted to tell you guys was from a few years ago when I was a sophomore in high school. This was right before Christmas break. Of my sophomore year. I forget if that was like 2015, probably. It's probably in between 2015 and 2016. And towards the end of the first semester of my sophomore year, I injured myself pretty badly. This is something that I've had to deal with my whole life. The physical challenges that I faced has been part of my life. And it just happened to be a huge problem right during my high school experience, right at the beginning, right in the middle of my sophomore year. And I actually ended up missing school for 8 weeks. I wasn't in the hospital for 8 weeks, but the doctor wouldn't let me go back to school for 8 weeks. Now, 8 weeks doesn't sound like a super, super long time. I mean, it is and it isn't. But
that's like 3 months. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's like 8 weeks of school. Like you get wrecked if you miss one day of school.
8 weeks. Okay, it's like 2 months.
Yeah. Ish. So good thing this isn't a math podcast. But yeah, so I was gone from school for 8 weeks, and I don't know. I don't want to make this sound like I did some giant grand thing because in my eyes it really wasn't a super grand or amazing thing that I did, but just the way things worked out is instead of postponing school or pausing school, and I feel very lucky and blessed that I was able to work with the school district to figure out a plan that I could do my work from home. So I was able to stay involved for those 8 weeks and complete my schoolwork. And that way, when I came back to school, I hit the ground running and I wasn't delayed in graduating. And I was able to, luckily, I think I was able to maintain my grades. I think I maintained all my grades, and then shout out to my Spanish teacher who had me literally do nothing. But everything else, I had to continue to do. I had to continue to study for my tests and do my homework. And, I was able to do that. And I feel like that's just a small, I don't want it to make it sound like some grand thing because I really don't think it is. But I feel like that was a situation where I had experience taking control of what I could do. I could have tried to postpone school. I could have tried to, my grades could have dropped, but luckily I was in the position to do so. And I put in the effort to maintain my grades and control what I can. And I think now that I'm telling the story, it's kind of ironic that, a lot of this COVID stuff, a lot of the progression that has dipped because of COVID is probably because we can't be going out very much, that we're having to stay at home all the time. But I guess I was able to get some experience having to do work from home back then in my sophomore year of high school and take control of what I could and just do my schoolwork instead of just letting it all go down the drain. So hopefully that story doesn't come across off like I'm trying to brag or anything, because I don't think it really was that amazing, but I just wanted to share it because it was just something from my personal life where I had an experience in the past of controlling what I can. And it made a huge difference. I wasn't delayed from graduating school, and nor did I feel like I missed out on the education that I needed to get.
Yeah, no, that was great. Like, yeah, you could have very easily just been like, oh, you know what? I can't go to school and I have all this going on right now. Like, I'm just going to either defer or just give up, and that's kind of it. But instead took what you were dealt and made the best out of it and was able to still come out ahead there. So
yeah. And just to add some context, I feel bad if I don't add any context but, I was able to do, it wasn't all 100% me. I put in the effort. I did my schoolwork, but I was very blessed to have the support of a teacher from my school district who would come to my house every now and then to help. That was part of something the school district was able to provide. And I was also able to have a tutor, which made a huge difference. And then my parents were very, very supportive. So I have to give credit where credit is due. But I think it was a cool situation in my life where I was able to take control of a bad situation and then, not let the negative effects overrun me, but rather just work with what I was, I didn't plan to get injured, nor did I want to get injured, nor did I enjoy the fact that I was injured and had to stay home for 8 weeks. But I think the moral of the story, or the experience that I was grateful to have, was that, I was able to take control of it and do what I could in that situation. I was able to take the deck of cards that I was dealt in that situation and make something out of it. It might have not been the perfect winning poker hand, but I was able to, walk away from the table with something valuable.
Yep. And now now during this time, I'm sure, I think you even kind of mentioned it, but all those skills and things that you learned from that time, you can now use, now. And I mean, it is a pretty similar situation, especially for your case there. So yeah, it's good that you're able to get those skills and continue to keep using them, controlling what you can for now, and still making those improvements and progressing as much as we can.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to add a call to action, I would say. But going back to the whole thing, this is all very specific to the individual. We can't tell you exactly what you should do, nor should we tell you to do anything. But hopefully, if you've made it this far in this conversation, you've had that spark, you've had that idea pop into your head, you've had that, that's something that stood out to you as something that might be able to apply to your life. And I guess if you felt that, I would invite you to take control of what you can and do what you feel like could be beneficial to you in your own specific situation.
Yeah. Like, even if you can't be doing the things that you would normally be doing, or if you have some other goals and working towards those, maybe, I don't know, maybe now would be a good time to try to broaden your horizons a little bit. Maybe try, maybe learning some kind of new skill, or maybe, who knows, there's tons of stuff you could do. Maybe trying to get back in touch with, or spend more time with family, or, just all those other kinds of little things that maybe get lost in all of our daily grinding. So hopefully you can find something that you can still work on and progress with, even throughout all of this. So.
Yeah. And then I guess to say one more time, some people have been very affected by this whole pandemic and might not have the liberty of being in a fortunate situation. So I guess our hearts go out to the people who have been hit hard by this. And we don't expect this advice. I wouldn't say advice, because we're not telling anyone to do anything specific, but I don't expect this discussion to help every single person out there. But hopefully it can help certain people. And with that, I guess that's really all we have to say today. Thanks for joining me, Sam. And I just invite all you guys to take control of what you can.
Yeah. And just know that everything will get better. So.
All right. Peace out. I guess that's all we got to say. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on our Instagram, Talk Progression, right? That's the first time we've shouted out. That's right, Sam, right? Yeah. Talk Progression.
Yeah. I think Talk Progression, on everything.
Yeah. Okay. So Talk Progression on Instagram, Talk Progression on Twitter, YouTube, Progression in Progress. Give us a follow there. Send me a message on either one of those social accounts, or if you follow one of my personal social accounts, send me a message. We're always looking for feedback. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you guys. Let us know what you think. Love you guys. Bye.
But